Hello, White Sox fans. It is Crystal O'Keefe with episode 21 of Visiting Dugout, brought to you by the Southside Sox, a part of Fans First Sports Network. Today on the show, I have my dear friend, baseball extraordinaire, and main talent over at Southside Sox, Tommy Barbee. He is here to talk about the Marlins because he is our Southeast correspondent.
Very accurate.
Yes,
Yes.
welcome, Tommy. Please, if you have anything to add on to your introduction.
No, thank you very much for having me. I always love getting the opportunity to talk with you, and it's fun to talk about other teams besides the White Sox. So
I
let's do it.
really love this podcast because I can hear about better teams all the
For
time.
sure, for sure.
Yeah, so we have a very wild National League East, kind of like a funny place right now. Everyone's going to live in the shadows of Atlanta. We just
Yes.
we just know that. As we're recording, the Marlins are in second, just above my other team, the Mets. And again, 3.5 games back while we're recording. So I will admit, I don't pay a ton of attention to the Marlins, aside from the wonderful GM and the very cute and fun mascot.
Yes.
So what is going on in Miami?
It has been an interesting season because the Marlins, I would say, are better in some ways than people expected, but worse in other ways. And by that, I mean it's actually been an old acquaintance that you'll know, Jorge Soler, that is leading the Marlins offense, which I don't think anybody would have seen coming. He has 17 home runs right now. He's really doing basically better than he's done at any point in his career other than that breakout season in Kansas City. And he's doing really well. But then on the flip side, Jazz Chisholm Jr. has been hurt pretty much most of the year, so he hasn't really had a chance to get going. And even on the pitching side, guys like Sandy Alcántara has been bad. And I can't believe I'm saying that. Like, here's the guy that's like your automatic Cy Young candidate year in and year out, and his ERA is over 5. So it's been an interesting place where it's like, you're feeling pretty good because there've been kind of these breakouts, but the guys that you expect to perform haven't really done that yet.
Yeah, do you think Jazz got like the MLB show curse?
That's, yeah. I mean, that's
curse.
I hate admitting to curses, but there's no other explanation because I mean, even for somebody that's been injured in the past, like this is a level of injuries that we haven't seen from him before.
Yeah, and then it's a bummer because he's so much fun. Like, I was excited when he got the cover, and my son was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to have that now." So I was like, "Well, you can wait until Easter. The Easter Bunny will be."
And I was excited for him this year too because they have a new manager with Skip Schumacher, and a lot of the issues that were happening in the clubhouse last year, both was in terms of just like the lack of veteran presence in the clubhouse, but also just Jazz and Don Mattingly could not have been two more different people. And Skip Schumacher seems to let all the players kind of be themselves and embraces that aspect of it. So they have really done well in that new clubhouse setting, it feels like.
So you had a Tony La Russa, Tim Anderson situation.
It was like that, yeah. The difference was that there was like at least some sustained winning that was happening.
Fair. So the Marlins, I mean, they were really bad last year. They were one of the worst teams in 2022. But again, like, they're in second place. They're above, the Mets, who we thought would be really hot.
For sure.
Obviously, no one's going to kind of beat Atlanta right now. But I mean, do you think it was a change to the manager that really helped them, or like what kind of changed for Miami?
Change in manager, I think, was a huge part of it. Also, Kim Ng has done a really great job at adding veteran presence like Luis Arias to kind of help bolster the credentials of the team and put in some leaders where you have guys that have been a part of winning cultures and winning organizations and kind of brought that to the table. I think that also it it gives that sense of optimism where, like, yes, they're in second place, and the guys that you expect to perform aren't even performing yet. So there's that kind of optimism where it's like, all right, if everybody kind of gets it together, there could be really something special happening here, especially with teams like the Mets and the Phillies kind of struggling in the NL East.
Yeah, I would like the Mets to stop struggling since I'm seeing
Yes.
more than the White Sox this year, but whatever. Um, so, and we talked about Sandy already. What
Mhm.
do you think that issue is to why he's had such a bad start?
No one can figure it out. It has been like the strikeouts have still largely been there. I've watched games where he's been just like spot on, pinpoint control, and he'll just have a flat inning where it's like, 3, 4 runs, and that's his game. And so it hasn't been just like the out and out bad that you sometimes see where pitchers just kind of fall off. This has been someone that is running just fine, but I don't know if it's, just concentration or focus when the pressure kind of gets on that he's starting to falter a little bit. But that has been probably one of the bigger surprises this year.
Yeah, because going into this season, I think everyone was really hyped about him. I know over
For
on
sure.
Pitcher List, Nick was constantly saying, like, oh, this is going to be such a breakout year for him. He's going to be so great. And then he just kind of fumbled the bag in the worst way in Miami.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the good thing for Miami is that they do have their number one prospect up in the majors right now in Yuri Perez, and he has been everything that all the folks hyped about him coming into the season. So it's nice when you can find the pitching elsewhere, but in general, just like top to bottom, all their pitching has been good but not great, and that's really where I think they probably have the most opportunities to improve.
I feel like that's the White Sox way, though. We're pitching
It
like
is,
good.
yeah.
It could be better.
It could be better. Yeah, I mean, there's a strange amount of similarities between the White Sox and the Marlins. I think the one difference is, the win-loss record, of course, but there's that similar level of young talent starting to get it together, and then they have the veteran guys that are there to kind of help bridge the gap until the rest of the young talent is ready. So you know that they're about a year or two away from seriously competing, but
Yeah.
the fact that they are where they are, that I could see a case for making a push for the playoffs.
Yeah, we talked about this with the White Sox, the last Outside Sox podcast that was recorded, and Zach Hayes
Hmm.
made a good point of where, Dylan Cease, it took him like 300 innings before he
Yeah,
really figured it out. And Michael Kopech is starting to reach that mark of,
for sure.
so many innings, and he's figuring it out. So yeah, it is really similar because these young guys on both teams are figuring it out. So, but I feel like the Marlins probably will be a contender before the White Sox.
Unfortunately, yeah.
That's just my pet. So, do you see the Marlins still sitting, second come July, or maybe even again in September, or do you think like the Mets or Phillies might surpass them?
I would be shocked if the Mets don't put it together. I
Mhm.
know that they have been really not performing well at all, but just with the amount of talent that they have on their roster and the amount of depth that they have, that's a
Mhm.
team that I I, I think should be up there.
Mhm.
But I think what will end up happening with the NL East is that it'll probably be very similar to the AL East, where you have multiple teams kind of looking at that wild card spot opportunity and going for it from that perspective. So I know that, things are kind of crazy in the National League in general, where all the teams are seemingly performing well. But I think that they have a very good chance at really at least sticking around to second place on the NL East side.
Yeah, that's fair. I know the Mets have some things to look forward to because it did just kind of come out that Edwin Diaz might not be
My
out for the rest
Yeah,
of the year. It could be like, September, he could play the last month. But yeah, I mean, ideally they would put it together before then. But who knows? They have been severely underperforming. It's like Pete Alonso and Mark Canha, and that's it.
That's been about it. Yeah.
Your roster.
Yeah, and I mean the thing with the Marlins too is that they mostly have been beating up on bad teams. Like, you know, a lot of their record, if you look at their wins, they're against teams that you expect teams to beat. So that's why it'll be an interesting matchup with the White Sox, because I think it'll be a good test for the White Sox, number one. And number two, I think it's really good to see how the Marlins can do against a team that's playing well right now, like the White Sox. But they haven't been able to beat the Mets consistently. They haven't been able to beat a lot of their division rivals or other teams. And that's really what's prevented them from getting any better in terms of their win-loss record.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you have an MVP candidate for the Marlins? You know, if you've got to pick somebody today to submit, do you have one?
It's got to be Jorge Soler, which is weird to say, but I mean,
I've never known him to be great.
No, but I mean, you know, there have been other guys that have been really good. Like Luis Arias has been really good. His OPS plus is 150, but like Jorge Soler hitting 17 home runs, driving in 36, also has an OPS plus of 132. Like he has been, it's like all the stars have aligned in terms of his performance thus far. And I would say a very close second place would be the aforementioned Eury Perez, because I think just as a rookie in 5 starts, he's been just lights out.
Yeah, he's been. I have too many podcasts, but he is an underdog on another show that I co-host. My co-host Justin for Pitch Pod has picked him for his underdog because he came up and it felt like he lit a fire under everybody's asses. He was like a nice, fresh face in there. So, but on the other end, like, who are you putting up on the trading block? Like, do you think they're going to be buyers, sellers? Are we trading off some talent?
I think they're buyers because they don't have a ton of depth from the position player side. Like a lot of their top tier prospects are all pitchers. So they have the opportunity to deal from a position of strength by trading away some of their top pitching prospects and getting a nice return out of that. I think that would be the way forward because there's always a market for young starting pitching. And they'll be able to kind of supplement some of the talent they have on their lineup by going that direction. Because I think they have a lot of good hitters. They don't have a ton of power. So if you look at the home runs, like from Jorge Soler to the next batter, there's quite a drop off in terms of power that they have right now. So that would be something that I could see them looking at as like an opportunity to kind of bring someone in that's on an expiring contract that can help contribute to the lineup.
Yeah, that's good to know. So we're going to take just a very quick break to pay bills, and then we will be back to talk about this series.
Let's go.
And we are back. Willow had to make sure she was heard before we went to break. So,
always,
you know, that's exactly it. So this upcoming series, right now we're recording. The White Sox are playing the Yankees. Wouldn't be surprised if they get swept. The Yankees are good. Although there has been talk that Aaron Judge might not be in this series, which still wouldn't really help, to be completely honest, because their pitching is phenomenal.
It's one less home run that they give up per game. So that's
exactly. And I mean, they're dealing with Lucas, which is great, but they also have Lance Lynn, which is not great.
Not so great right now.
The Marlins will get some actual decent pitching because I know Kopech has been on a tear lately.
Yes.
And then they'll probably bounce back to Giolito, and you might get Cease. I can't remember exactly what the order is right now, but like they'll get decent pitching at least. So how do you feel going into the series, you know, as the Marlins?
I feel pretty good just because the Marlins, even though they haven't been pitching to the level that most folks expected, all of their pitchers are strikeout pitchers. So like they don't give up a ton of home runs. They don't give up a ton of walks. They are all averaging anywhere between 8 to 12 strikeouts per 9. So, I mean, I think if you look at some of the White Sox lineup, depending on how they do against this Yankee series, like that's going to be to me a telltale sign on how guys like Luis Robert does against their pitching, especially with like the outside changeups, curveballs, anything of that nature. Same for Eloy. Those are all guys that tend to struggle with the outside off-speed pitches, and they feast on staying in the strike zone at the beginning of the at bat and getting you out with one of their, outside pitches. And I think that could be a difficult point for the White Sox lineup. In terms of the Sox pitching, I could see Kopech just kind of running through this lineup without issue. But for guys like Lynn, who haven't had the quality of stuff that you'd normally like to see, or even a guy like Cease who can struggle with his command, I think those are two tougher opportunities for the White Sox.
Do you think they can handle the likes of, our Jake Burger and our stud Romy González?
Well, with the way Romy's been hitting, who knows? But I think Jake Burger is really interesting because I think he has sustained his hitting a lot longer than I expected. Because usually this is about the time that pitching coaches will be like, all right, let's get the video to see where his tendencies are and all of that. And they're still trying to pitch him differently based on what they know about him. And he's still hitting the hell out of the ball. So I don't know how they'll approach him. It might be a situation where they just frankly pitch around him and make one of the other hitters try to beat them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think a lot of people were expecting Jake to just be another Yermin.
Yeah.
They figured him out so quickly.
Absolutely.
But yeah, he has sustained it really well. And, I adore him. My Twitter follower, Jake Burger, we're homies. So yeah, that'll be interesting. So do you have keys for the Marlins to take this series?
I think the biggest key for the Marlins is going to be really stringing together hits against the White Sox and just constantly putting pressure on the pitching. I don't think the pitching will have too hard of a time against this offense just because the White Sox offense has been struggling to find consistency. So I would see these games as being kind of like in the 5-4, 4-2 type of range. And really the keys for the Marlins are going to be put the pressure on, force early bullpen games, and really get to the pitching by putting pressure on them.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you have a fear though going into this? I know we just talked about Jake and how people haven't figured him out yet, but
I think the biggest fear is just like I said before, the Marlins haven't been incredibly consistent, and I know the White Sox haven't been either, but this is just as easily a series where the White Sox could have figured things out based on their series against the Yankees, and they're just riding high on momentum, and it's a total buzzkill for the Marlins and kind of where they're at in their season. So just as much as I think it could go the Marlins way where they have a good shot to, get 2 of the games, it could absolutely be a sweep because that's kind of how the Marlins have been all year.
Yeah, that's fair. So I know we talked about their pitching has been great. Would you consider that kind of the biggest threat against the White Sox right now? Or do you think there's somebody else that could, or just anything else that could really take the White Sox down?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is definitely their pitching. The Marlins also are just an incredibly athletic team. So even in terms of stolen bases and kind of, playing the small ball, which is a lot of the influence, I would say, from Skip Schumacher, because that's how he played the game when he was with the Cardinals. There's a lot of that, and I could see that wreaking havoc on a Sox defense that isn't always as sound as it should be. But I think that those are probably the 2 areas where, if as a White Sox fan, you're like, all right, this is what you want to look out for.
So who wins this series? Who's your best bet?
I will always say the Marlins win the series against the White Sox, and I'll probably pick against the White Sox against any of these that we do in the future. But yeah, I do think the Marlins are better than their record has shown, which is weird to say because they're in a better position than most expected. But unless the pitching matchups, like you said, work out where it's like Kopech and Cease or some combination thereof, where there might be a better chance of the Sox pulling it off, I see the Marlins winning the series.
Yeah, I can see that too. No one is surprised at this point. We're 21
No.
episodes in. If you really think that I'm gonna like say the White Sox are always gonna win it, then you have not been paying any attention to my answers. Oh, so let's break away from the pathetic team that I am here to talk about. Yours is better. What are your thoughts so far just on this season? We've got a lot of teams that we didn't think would be good that are good.
For sure.
We've got teams that we projected, or like even pitchers, like I said, Sandy, we all projected that these people were going to be great.
Yeah.
And they are slumping, and even the
Mhm.
Astros aren't doing so hot because they've lost a lot of their power. They're
Yeah.
getting old, which
Mhm.
is they're like our age now, so they're getting pretty old.
Yes.
So where are you at with this season so far?
It has been an interesting season. I think that a lot of the teams that I kind of had on the horizon for next year are actually good now, and that applies to the Orioles. Um, the Orioles, I knew were on the right trajectory. I actually liked the trades that they made at the trade deadline a couple years ago when everyone's like, what are they doing? Why are they getting rid of all their veterans? And it's like, no, they have a good core. That makes sense. But I thought they were at least a year out. Same for the Diamondbacks. I thought were a year out, but they've been phenomenal too, and a lot of fun to watch. And then you have teams like the Blue Jays, which just I don't know what it is with them, but every year you kind of look at the team and it's like this will be the year that they figure it out, and they still don't have that it factor. And is surprising as Alcántara has been for the Marlins, Alec Manoah has been that guy for me for the AL, where I had him as a Cy Young lock for this year because he was just totally locked in. He was even doing well in spring training, and it's like he's at a brick wall. So I think there've been a lot of interesting storylines, and it's one of the reasons why, as tempting as it is to just like completely give up on the White Sox, it's hard to because there's been that element of surprise, and you know that it doesn't take a lot for these teams to turn it around. But there have also been just as many teams like the Mets or, even the Padres, where it's like they have invested so heavily in these active 26-man rosters, but the injuries just keep piling up, and they're not able to outpace the number of injuries that they're dealing with.
Yeah, with the Mets, I mean, Max has kind of been so hot and cold. Verlander was out for the
Yeah.
longest time, and
Yep.
Tyler McGill, who we thought was, going to be great,
Gonna be the guy. Yeah.
he's been struggling too. But like, I kind of wear egg on my face because while I agree the Orioles, I thought, this could be their year. I thought, if last year was legit, this is the year that they're going to go pretty far. But I also thought the Mariners were going to be that team, and the Mariners
Yeah.
are doing nothing right now.
I don't know. Whatever juiced baseballs the rest of the league has, I just don't think they've made it to Seattle yet, because they are putting up some offensive numbers that I don't think I've seen this late into the season. And then on the other extreme, you have Jarrett Kelenic, who's finally figured it out and putting it together. So it's weird.
Yeah, I thought like, Julio Rodriguez, especially after watching, All-Star Game and Home Run Derby,
Yeah.
oh, this is the future of baseball. He's going to be it. The Mariners are just going to totally kick ass next year. And then I was like, oh, no, just kidding. They're not. But, I'm glad that I was at least half right with the Orioles. I knew that was going to happen. It's obviously because they have James McCann, one of the best asses in baseball. So that's probably why they're like, that's all their power is James McCann's ass, probably.
Exactly. That's what powers everything. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're so much fun to watch too. I ordered an Orioles
They
shirt.
are.
I felt like I was betraying everything because I ordered an Adley Rutschman shirt.
Nice.
He's the best. He's so much fun, and
He
all he
is.
does is like quote, "I think you should leave."
Yes.
Everything he does. So I mean, you can't just not love him.
Did you see the MLB thing that he did on TikTok where he was the salesman and convincing people to buy? Yeah, I mean, it's like you can't watch that and not be a fan. So I totally understand.
He's so funny. And there's a workout video where he's quoting nothing but "I think you should leave" during it.
Yeah.
And he said that he was going to make all of the team watch season 2 3 coming out because everyone was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Have you never seen this show?" And I was like, I know for a fact that several group chats that I'm in just really quote that all the time.
All the time. Yes.
You and I quote it all the time. Keelan and Jan, we all do it constantly. In fact, my Twitter name right now is a reference to the 3rd season about ordering 55 tacos.
Yes.
You can't not add love Adley, but
no. But yeah, I think it's going to shape up to be a really interesting trade deadline in second half of the season because there are so many teams that not only are legitimately in it, there are a lot of teams that think they're in it. And I think that will add up to either a fury of trades where everybody's trying to make moves to get that next level, or it's just kind of a standoff where everybody is like, all right, I'm not selling because I might have this 5% chance of, making it to the playoffs. Cough for con.
Yeah, we also have one of the coolest dudes in baseball coming back soon. He was driving himself down to Kentucky, Joey Votto.
Yeah.
So he's rehabbing. So I'm excited.
He's rehab. Yeah.
I'm excited to see what happens there because I know he's kind of no longer the star of the show in Cincinnati. It's a lot of younger guys now, but
it is. But he is still so much ingrained in that team and that culture. So I mean, I think no matter what, when he comes back, he will be absolutely embraced as he should be.
Yeah, I hope so. He's I know a lot of people obviously think Johnny Bench, and I do too when you think of the Reds, but modern day people
that was how long ago?
Yeah. Modern day people that aren't familiar with Johnny Bench, they think of the Reds and they think Joey Votto.
Exactly.
And creepy Mr. Redlegs. Terrifying mascot. He's so scary. He's so scary. He's even scary.
It's not the worst mascot, but it's up there.
No, according to my daughter, the worst mascot is Bernie Brewer because he kills children on his slide.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's dark
about him during her.
I mean, he does have that creepy shed, so I get it, but
he's scary.
Yeah.
But
twirly mustache.
Yeah, he's. I don't know. She was 6 doing these rankings, so they probably need updated. But him and the Padres creepy mascot, those were.
See, that I agree is
for her.
No, and that just adds up for so many reasons. So I agree with that one.
Maybe it's just because they're people. Maybe that's her disconnect because everybody else is charming. But all right, that's a lot of mascot talk. Well, thank you so much, Tommy, for coming on, chatting about the Marlins. I'm sure we will chat again.
Absolutely.
The Atlanta series at the very least. And this is your time to tell everybody where to find you and follow you.
All right. Well, everyone can find me and follow me at Kinda Blue, BLEU. So it's the French version. I am also always on Southside Sox, either podcasting when I can or writing every other Sunday about my really intrusive thoughts about the White Sox and why they suck that particular week.
It's always great. Also, just read anything Tommy writes because I have to talk him into it quite a bit. But when he does, it's always the best things ever. I'm just Tommy, no, you're a great writer. Shut up. that has been several conversations that we've had.
It has been. That's true. Yes.
So read what he writes when he does, and go follow him. And, thank you, Tommy. Best of luck in this series.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.